Hi, this is Anita from the Dusty Roads podcast. Today I want to talk a little bit about how travel or seeing the world can really change you and change who you are. When I was in college, I took a trip through China, and I'd have to say that that trip was a pivotal moment in my life, and it changed me on many levels. I didn't go for luxury or comfort. I was very much down in with the trenches. I boarded trains that rattled through endless countrysides, buses that bumped along dirt roads. I rode in the back of trucks. I met random people along the way. And I just really had a great experience traveling and seeing the countryside of China like I'd never seen it before. I saw it very much up close and personal. One of the things that I used to really love to do is, sometimes I go to like a monument or some other place and I'd see the monument and it was great. And then I just kind of sit and I'd people watch and kind of get to know some people and meet some new friends along the way. I just love doing that. I love talking to the people that I was there with and getting to know them and getting to know something about their lives and their experiences. That trip changed my worldview. It deepened my empathy and gave me a new lens to understand not just China, but the people in China in general. And that's the real power of travel. That travel is not just about the postcard moments or the Instagram moments. And this is something that really is one of my beefs that bothers me a lot. When people just travel and all they want to do is let's take a selfie. We've been here, and they take a selfie and they post it so everyone can say, "Oh, isn't that so wonderful you traveled?" But they don't really immerse themselves in the travel and the experience themselves. It becomes all about taking that picture, getting that selfie next to that monument, and then saying, "Look at me, I've been there." That's not really what travel's about. Travel should be something that changes you, that makes you a different person. It's not the postcard moments, it's the unexpected encounters that quietly rearrange how you think, feel, and you see the world. Travel should build empathy. There's a growing body of research that shows that immersive travel increases empathy. A 2017 study from the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that people who spend extended time abroad scored higher in perceptive taking and emotional understanding measures. So in other words, if you're abroad or you've been spending time abroad or away from your own culture, this is going to help your own sense of perspective and emotional. But when you live among people whose lives look very different than your own, it becomes harder to dehumanize them. You start to see the nuances. You stop lumping people into us and them. You begin to see that there's a whole other world out there. My experience in China taught me that there was no textbook ever could. I remember riding a packed train where I sat across from an older man who wore a Mao jacket and had hands worn from decades of work. We shared sunflower seeds and some watermelon, and he told me about his children, the land reforms and how it was affecting him and his family, the changing times. It wasn't a political debate. It was a human exchange. It was two people talking and exchanging our humanity. I saw him as not as a representative of China, but I saw him as a father, a worker, a human being with hopes and frustrations just like mine. That's sort of like that stays with you when you meet people on a very personal level and you get to know about them and their lives. You begin to realize that in many ways we have much more in common than what we might think we have. That we are very much human beings that may have things more in common than we have our own differences. Travel can also help you spark creativity. Travel just doesn't make you more empathetic, but travel can also make you more creative. According to research that was published, is people who live abroad, not just visit, but people who actually live abroad, tend to develop more excellent creative problem-solving skills. And I believe, too, that they begin to also understand other people. This last weekend, I was taking a yoga class. My teacher's from Holland, her husband's from Israel. And after the class, there was we went out to eat, it was customary, went out to a local coffee shop. And, there was somebody that was there from Australia and a guy that was there from the Ukraine. And it was, interesting. We could all talk and had something in common, something to talk about. We all understood each other on a very, very sort of different level. It wasn't like them and me, it was us. We were one. And I think that's really like when you travel, when you live abroad, and you don't just like live abroad for a short period of time, an extended period of time. You begin to see the world in a very different view, kind of like what I've talked here in my podcast a lot about. You begin to really live your life as a global citizen. You know, and part of the reason is because when you adapt to a new culture, it pushes your brain to think differently. You're constantly decoding unfamiliar cues, adjusting your behavior, and finding new communication methods. In China, when I traveled China so many years ago, I had to figure out things with my limited language skills and limited guidebook for rural regions. I had to learn to read the room, pay attention to nonverbal signals, and adjust quickly. I had to learn to be able to do all of that, to be able to see things and understand things in order to survive. That's the kind of cognitive flexibility that sticks with you. It's helped me in my work today, in the work that I do. It's helped me in relationships. It's helped me with life's unpredictable turns and twists that you have. Travel can also reconnect you with a purpose. One of the most surprising benefits of immersive travel is how you can reconnect you with a sense of purpose. When you're taken out of your daily routine and you've exposed to vastly different ways of living, you question your assumption about what matters. You reevaluate your goals and ask more significant questions. Traveling through China at such a formative age, did precisely that for me. I saw people making do with little, communities pulling together, and a rhythm of life that prioritized, family and endurance over consumerism. I saw a different part of China. I saw how important the family was to many of the Chinese, how important community was to them. It forced me to, ask myself, what kind of life do I want? What do I value? What's important to me? What's important to my life? My story is just one among many stories about people who've traveled. You'll hear similar stories of transformation. You'll hear similar stories of how travel has, changed people. There's all different ways that travel can change you and change your perspective and essentially change who you are. Travel can also bring with it a lot of discomfort. There can be times where it's frustrating, where it's hard, where you just cry out. And it can be lonely. It can be difficult. You can miss out on things that are going on at home. There can be many types of discomforts that can make you off balance. But travel can help you to be able to, understand. I believe that those discomforts are far outweighed by the benefits that you gain. I remember getting lost cycling in a small city in Guilin, China, and unsure how to ask for directions. A local family saw me. They invited me in for lunch and tea. We couldn't speak the same language fluently, but they offered warmth and hospitality. They gave me what little they had, and they fed me some rice and a little bit of vegetables from their garden. Discomfort isn't the enemy. It's a teacher. It teaches you humility. It teaches you to listen more, judge less, and adapt constantly. When I thought of that little family and their little hut that they had there at the time, and I thought about them working off the land, it really, really made me see what they valued. They loved their children. They loved each other. They loved their home. And they really were very kind and generous people, maybe more kind and generous than I am sometimes in my own life. So one thing you can do when we talk about living life as a global citizen is you can be a lifelong believer in the transformation of travel. Believe that travel can change you and can make you a different person. That travel can help to change your life in positive and great ways. If you let it, travel can and will challenge you, but it will also teach you and it will change you. And you will not be the same person after you've traveled. We hope that you will read our blog that we have on this, which is entitled Power of Travel, How Seeing the World Changes Who You Are. And that you will read it, and that'll give you some ideas as to why travel continues to be such an important part of, I believe, anyone's life. If you have the opportunity, take it. Go out and travel, explore and see the world. But remember, don't just be a tourist. be someone who travels with a purpose and with cultural literacy in place. If you want to understand cultural literacy, we have done a podcast also on that. We can put a link to that podcast also in the description, where you can be able to learn what it means to travel with cultural literacy in mind. Thank you so much for listening. We certainly do appreciate you. And we hope that you'll join with us and living your life as a global citizen, being part of this great, beautiful global world that we're part of. Thank you. And we look forward to having you join with us and subscribe to our community.